What is up, 7th grade? This is lesson 93. We're talking about two-step equations and also inequalities. And everything we're doing in this lesson are actually things that you've already done in previous lessons. So you're thinking, oh no, now we have two-step instead of one step. It's okay. Lots of people like to do the two-step. Get it? That was a joke. That's okay. What we're going to do, where before we'd either just add or subtract, or we'd multiply or divide. Now we're going to either add or subtract and also multiply or divide. So if we look here at example 1, we're trying to solve, notice this term has things with x's in it, and this one does not. So this one has variables in it, this one does not, and this one does not. So our initial goal, is to get everything with variables on one side and everything without variables to the other side. So because this is a positive 1.2x, I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to subtract 1.2, or I'm going to add a negative 1.2. So that way whenever I combine these two things together, they'll go to 0. But if I'm going to keep this scale, if I'm going to keep this equal, what I do to one side, I must also do to the other, so minus 1.2 over here. So on the left-hand side, 1.2 minus 1.2, those two go to 0. So I just have the 0.4x plus 0, or you can just leave it as 0.4x. And then 6 minus 1.2, that would be 6.0 minus 1.2. To borrow, that's going to be a 5, and the 10 is going to be 0.8, and 5 minus 1 is 4, so it's going to be 4.8. So now, notice that this is not just an x, this is 0.4x's, so I'm going to do the opposite. Since these are multiplying, I'm going to do the opposite and divide by 0.4. When I do one side, I must also do the other, 0.4. Well, 0.4 divided by 0.4, that just becomes 1, or 1x. And so I'll just write it like this, x. And this other part over here, see I have 4.8 divided by the 0.4. So I'll convert that into, I need a 4 on the outside, so this will be 4.8, right? I moved it over 1 here, so I'm going to move it decimal place over 1 there. So that means this is not 4.8, but just 48.0. So 4 goes into 4 one time. That's 4, subtract, that gives me 0, bring down the 8. And 4 goes into 8 two times, so x is going to equal to 12. Alright, let's try another one. This one has fractions in it, but it's still the same idea. So because this is a negative 1/2, I want to add a half to it. So if I'm going to add a half, I'm going to say plus 1/2. Go ahead and do that to the other side as well to keep this equal, because that's my goal. So negative a half plus a half, or a half minus a half, that goes to 0. So on the left-hand side, I just have that negative 2/3 x is equal to, well, we're going to figure that out here. So I have 1/3 plus 1/2. In order to add those together, I have to have the same denominator. So I'm going to multiply this one by 3 over 3, and this one by 2 over 2. So this will give me 2/6, the same thing as 1/3, plus 3/6, which would give me 5/6. Now we'll remember our trick from last week, where we multiply by the reciprocal here, so I'm going to multiply by 3 over 2 on both sides, and actually, since this is a negative, we're going to multiply by a negative 3 over 2. So the negative 3 over negative 3 reduces to 1, 2 over 2 reduces to 1, so on the left-hand side, I just end up with x. On the right-hand side, I'm going to have, actually, 3 goes into 6 two times and into 3 one time, so I'll have negative 5 over 4. So you write it like that, or that would be negative 1 and 1/4. Either one of those answers would work out just fine. Now this one over here looks a little bit scarier because it looks like a big fraction. But I don't think it's too much scary. Just notice that this is a grouping. So this up top has x's, this down here doesn't, and all of this up here is being divided by 2. So what I want to do is to do the opposite of dividing by 2, which is to multiply by 2. And what I do to one side, I must do to the other. So those 2's will reduce, and I will end up with 2 plus k on the top. And on the right-hand side, I have 4 times 2, which is 8. Okay? Well, k is not by itself yet. Right now I have 2 more than k, right? There's 2 plus k. So this is a positive 2, so I'm going to go ahead and subtract 2 from both sides, because that 2 minus 2, that just becomes 0. And so what's left is 0 plus k, or just the k. On the right-hand side, I have 8 minus 2, which is 6. So the answer for this one would be k equals 6. Now we can actually do the same idea here with fractions, or sorry, not with fractions, but with inequalities. So even though this is an inequality, we still do the same idea. This one has an x in it, this one does not, so I'm going to move this to the other side. So opposite operation, I'm going to add 5, because that's a negative 5. So add 5 there. So left-hand side, I have 2x is greater than or equal to 6, because 1 plus 5 is 6. And now this is 2k's, but I want to know what just 1k is. So then I'm going to do the opposite of multiplying, which is to divide. So 2 divided by 2 is just 1, and 1 times x is x. And then 6 divided by 2 is 3. I'm going to keep that same inequality sign, so x is greater than or equal to 3. So if I were to graph that, here's 0, here's 1, here's 2, here's 3, here's 4. I'm going to do a closed circle here because it's a greater than or equal to, so 3 is included in that, and x is bigger than 3. So numbers bigger than 3 would be to the right of them, 4, 5, 6, etc. So I'll try my little up arrow and to the right. For this next one here, notice this one has a variable, the p, in it, but this one does not, so I want to get rid of this. So this is a negative 9, so the opposite of negative 9 is a positive 9. And if I'm adding a positive 9 to the right, I have to add a positive 9 to the left, because I want to keep this inequality true. So negative 9 plus 9, those go to 0. So 0 plus p over 2 is just that, p over 2. Still going to be greater than, and then on the left-hand side, I have negative 11 plus 9. Those are different signs. So I'm going to subtract, so 11 minus 9 is 2. I'm going to keep the sign of the one that's further from 0, which would be the 11, so minus 2 on the left-hand side. Now p is being divided by 2, so the opposite of that is going to be to multiply by 2. So on the right-hand side, 2 divided by 2 is just 1, which was my goal. So on the right-hand side, I end up with just 1p, or p. On the left-hand side, I end up with 2 times 2. Those have different signs. So it's going to be a 4, but it's going to be a negative because they have different signs. And this p is larger than the negative 4. So over here is 0, negative 2, negative 4, negative 6. This time I'm going to put an open circle around my negative 4 because it does not include the negative 4. It's just things that are bigger than the negative 4. So negative 4 doesn't work, so that's why I drew an open circle. And notice, again, p's are larger than the negative 4. So the numbers that are larger than negative 4 would be like 0 or negative 2 or even 5 or 10 or 300. So I'm going to go to the right. All right. And I think that should get you everything you need to be able to complete your worksheet. So make sure you get that and do your absolute best. Good luck, guys.